Okay guys, we by this point have built all the pages for our interactive PDF for portfolio except for this contact page. So it has the shell on it, but we need to put a form in here. The one I've designed for this just takes the basic information you might want on a small scale. So your name, phone number, and email, whether you'd rather be contacted by phone or email, if you want to subscribe to the blog, and then whatever areas of interest might be to you. So these are kind of standard questions, and keep in mind that when you press yes or no, it does either or. It won't do both. And that's the same with the email and phone. And with our name, take note of the size of the type. When someone is done with this form, they would submit it and it would go to your email. So how you set these forms up kind of helps with the information that it gives you. So let me show you how you would build something like this in InDesign. I'm sure there are a lot of ways to do forms, especially interactive forms. But let me show you how to do one in InDesign. So the first thing we want to do is kind of make a decision on the background of this. We've got the shell, so I'm just going to put a box that's gray. And then if I just click in there anywhere, and I'm going to get out of the preview mode. You can see I have a margin around the outside, but I want a margin in this area. So I'm going to go to text frame options. I put the preview on, and I'm going to keep going in. Do you see how it's giving me this inset spacing? I keep going in. That should do it, about 124, and say OK. And that gives me a really nice guide within this boxed area. But I want to lock this box, and that guide's going to disappear. So I'm going to draw guides over. You just drag them from the ruler. I'm really just using this inset to help me quickly find the center of this box. Okay, now I can go and lock that. And here is where my form is going to sit. So before we can make this an interactive form, we actually have to build the form. We're going to have name, phone, and email are three areas where they're going to fill it out. And then contact preferences and subscribe to my photography blog are both radio buttons that they're going to choose. And then the last thing is a drop down and then submit. So let's start just putting in the text. So I'm going to start right on the edges here with name. I do have a paragraph style that I used for the buttons at the bottom, so I'm just going to start with that and then change it and make a new style. So I want this to be flush left. I definitely want it white, so that looks good. And let's just make a new one. And we'll call this form fields, just in case we need it. Now I want to take that box and I want to fit the text box around the word as close as possible. So you can do that just by clicking on the corner. And I'm going to undo it and do it again. Just by double clicking on this corner. So I'm just going to double click and the text box will go to the size of the type. Now we also have phone, email, and all of that. So I'm going to drag out the next one by holding the option key. Put it about there. Now this time, my smart guides kick in. As soon as you have more than 2 items, smart guides will tell you. So this should help us the whole way down. You could also do step and repeat. So edit, step and repeat, and I just want no horizontal change, but my vertical looks like about 29 pixels is right. I want 6, let's just even say 8. We're still nowhere near the bottom of our grid, so actually let's try that again. Let's go a little further apart. We got plenty of room. So these will be all our text that goes to the left of our fields, radio buttons and such. So the first one is name, the second one is phone, and you can see the box got a little small. So you just double click it, same thing. This one is email, and then that's going to be a space, so I'm going to delete that one. This one is going to be contact. I'm just going to have to come way out on that one. And the next one is also a long one, so I'm just going to bring it out. Subscribe to my photography blog. And this type seems like it's spread way out. Oh, it is 130. Yeah, we don't want that for our form fields. So I'm glad I have these all as a paragraph style. I can bring this way in just to 0. Fix that. There we go. Much better. And then another box that's going to go really wide. So I'm going to pull that out. Please indicate area of. This one you're going to delete. And then this is going to be our submit button. So this is going to come out here, but we want it to go a little farther down probably. Okay, so now we have all our type on the left side. We need to make the spaces on the right. So their name, what's going to happen there is that that's going to be a text field. So it needs to be a separate text box. So I'm just going to hold the Option key to duplicate it. And I'm just going to send this box over here. Make it nice and long all the way to the end. But I'm going to take the name out of there. And I'm going to make the text box a white box. And I might want to make it just a little bit. Let's see what it looks like when we take away all these guides. Yeah, it looks like it needs to be a little bit taller. And I'm going to hold the Option key. Bring this one centered to the type. And this one centered to the type. Now we have our 3 text fields. For our contact preference, I'm actually going to grab one of these just to kind of give us an area to work with. And what I'm going to do is get our guides on. I'm going to set guides for this so that it stays within this area of the type. And then I can get rid of the white box. And for my contact preferences, I want to make radio buttons. So I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to hold the Option key to make it from the center. I'm going to make that circle white. And then I'm going to duplicate this text. Option, the Shift key, and this one's going to say email. Make that smaller by clicking the right. I'm going to do that for this one too. Email, and now I'm just going to grab these 2. Option, duplicate them right here. This one's going to say phone. And again, that box is a little small, so double click it. And then I'm going to drag one more over that says text. So now what we want to do is make sure that these are all centered. So let's grab this one. And now our smart guides will help us out and tell us when we have the exact same space on either side of this. And on this last one, we're going to say text. And then for subscribe to my blog, we're also going to use radio buttons, just 2 of them. So I think we could just take these 2, hold the Option key, drag these down until it's perfectly lined up. If you're not seeing those guides, make sure you go to View, Grids and Guides, and make sure your smart guides are turned on. And I'm going to say under this one, an enthusiastic yes. And on this one, I'm going to say no, thanks. And again, let's make that box fit it. Double click. And then we have one more box we need for please indicate area of interest. So let's just drag one of these down. Line it up with the text centered. Line it up with the grid at the right. And I think these all look like they need to go just a little to the right. And make it shorter. Perfect. And then this is our submit. Okay. If we turn that off, we'll see we have all of our buttons and all of our fields. We could space these out a little bit more if we wanted to. I could take this one, bring it down, and this one will tell me when it's centered between there. That looks good. And I think this one could move apart a little bit too. It looks a little crowded. It's right when you get to the 3rd item that your smart guides start working. So now it'll kick in and tell me. Yeah, that looks a little better. And then this button, we want to be a button, so you can style it however you want. I'm just going to make it a white box with black text. So you want to make sure it feels like a button. Okay, so now comes the fun part. We'll just open up the buttons and forms and start putting some action with all of these. So let's start up here. This is a text field, meaning that you want people to fill that out. So that one is actually listed here. It's not a button. So we're going to call this name field. It doesn't do anything. And if you want this form to be one that someone could download and print instead of filling out like this, then you would keep the check on printable. Scrollable means they can keep going and keep going, but in this case we made such a long field that I'm sure that will fit someone's name. And then here's where you can replace the font. So we can put this in the same font that we're doing the rest of it with. It'll just make it nicer to look at. So we can go, and we can always alter that later. And then we'll do the same thing to the other two. So those three are done. Now we're going to do our contact preferences. So let's turn off this. And so this is a radio button. Now what you have to ask yourself with this button is, do you want them to be able to choose more than one? So their contact preference, do you just want one? Or do you want them to be able to say either email or phone? Let's go to radio button. Now, if you want these to be an either or and they can only choose one, then you would name each of them the same. So we would name these contact pref. And then each of these is going to get a off and on. So by being a radio button, it already figures that out for you. And then the button value on this is email. And then you just do that for the other two. Okay, so I want to make sure that I've named these all exactly the same thing. So this one, the name didn't take. So it's contact pref and email. So you got to make sure you hit return after you name it. Contact pref, contact pref. Okay, so that will give us either or. If you want them to be able to select more than one, you would just name them by their buttons. You could say button 1 or email button or something like that. But if you want them to either or, then you have to make it the same name. Now to the photography blog, this is definitely an either or. So we'll make this a radio button, put it in the off position, and we're going to call this subscribe. Make sure that you spell it right and remember what it is. So this one's going to be yes. Okay, you want to double check, make sure that those are named the same thing, spelled the same way, subscribe, subscribe. So that should work. And now this one, the area of interest, we want to make that a actual drop down. So we're going to say we want a combo box is what it's called here. So you can put interest as the name. And under description, we'll say area of interest. And then we'll just start listing items. So the first one we're going to say is animal photography. We'll say plus. And then you can just keep adding them. Okay, and you could just keep going and going and going. And for this, we're going to do the same thing, make it into the type that we've been using to build the whole thing. Might as well make it 14 also. And then the last thing we want to do is have this form submitted to our email. So we're going to make this a button, and we'll call this submit. And the action is submit form. And then you just give the URL. So it would be mail to, and that will send it to an email. So put that in the beginning, mail to, and then a colon, and then your email address. And then, of course, for something like that, since it's a button, we definitely want a rollover. So right now it's white with black type. So maybe when you roll over, we can use that red again and make it red type. Back in the normal form. Okay, so because nothing else is compatible with forms except for an interactive PDF. Remember our chart? Only an interactive PDF can do forms, so we're going to have to test this just by exporting it. Since you already did the rest of the portfolio, you only have to submit page 9. So we're going to say export as an interactive PDF. And since I have to download all these to check them, please put your name on it. So M.Vito and then form. And we only want page 9. And let's see how it works. Fill out my name. Yes. I like the type. Type size seems right for the box. So that's 14 point. And then phone number, email. And then here's where we can check our radio buttons. Now our contact preference, I set this up so you can only choose one. So I decided email and then I changed my mind. Phone. And I changed my mind. Text. Okay, so remember, if they're all named the same thing, it will give one value. Only one value will be allowed for this. And then the subscribe to my photography blog. Yes. No thanks. Make sure that's an either or. Area of interest, you can see the pull down, and I'm going to say architectural photography, and then I'm going to submit it. Okay, so that's all you have to submit for this form. Just submit the last page, page 9, interactive. Test it first, because that's the first thing I'm going to do is download it. I'm going to make sure I can fill out all 3 forms. Your contact preference, either all of them are the same or only one can be chosen at a time. The blog should definitely be an either or, and then several areas of interest, and then the submit form. I'm not going to test that, but I just want you to know how that works. Okay, that's it, guys.